So that lovely glow you see over there is Katie Titi, and she's here with me today. Firstly, to talk about her new book, and secondly, to really talk about something a whole lot deeper, which is living your life intentionally, both the relationships you keep personally as well as business and professionally. And so Katie's chosen to really, carve out her niche doing this, helping women find love. But I think what she teaches, the principles are really, really universal for whether you're trying to attract clients or customers or a boyfriend or a girlfriend. I think there's just so much in common. So first of all, Katie, thank you and welcome for being here.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, and she's in her backyard. How cool is that? So we're just hanging out right now.
Yeah.
I got the ocean right over there. So we wanted to have like a really deep, meaningful conversation and go deep right off the start. So I wanted to ask you, you see a lot of people come to you, broken relationships, and stuff's not working. Like, what are the biggest things that you see people doing wrong and doing right that really causes that? Because a lot of people don't believe they can have their best mate or their best business. They really just don't feel like they deserve it from the start. And you obviously are so good at helping people with that.
I think, honestly, some of the biggest things that I see, and this is just very general, but they're overarching themes that we see everywhere, and it's not just in relationships, it's in business, it's in everything else. And I might trigger some people by saying this, but there's an aspect of not feeling like one is able to take responsibility for what's going on. We see a lot of people say things like, oh, well, it's not me, and they'll blame or they'll project or whatever. And the thing is that if you are going to change an aspect of your life, you have to choose to look at yourself. And that can feel kind of painful and daunting and like, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit. But at the same time, it's like, well, how bad do you want the change? How bad do you actually want the change? So I would invite people to say, okay, you know what, I'm going to be self-responsible. No, I manifested 7 guys in a row that all treated me the same way. It's something that I get to change. It's something that I get to look at. And then the other thing that I also see, and these are directly linked, is people giving their power away. They don't think that they have the power to change. They think that's for someone else. But really it's for anyone that's willing to say yes to it. So I would say those are the 2 biggest things that keep people from the relationships and the life and the business that they want, is that, it's kind of like an ostrich wanting to keep its head in the sand. Maybe it's comfortable and maybe it's easy, but it's not going to get you what you want.
It's funny you mention that because I don't think most people would be that honest with themselves, obviously, as you were with you, where you had 7 guys, all kind of the same characteristics. I had this amazing story. I was watching Byron Katie one time. I don't know if you know her or her work.
I love her. I love her work.
Amazing. Yeah. And this one guy said basically that he's very average looking and average income, and the way he saw himself was average, which was much more important. And he said, girls, they just want to date rich, handsome, fun guy and bad boys. Nobody's interested in a guy like me. And every time I meet a girl, she's only interested in me. And so Katie asked the audience, and she was like, how many of you fit that description, and be honest? And some of them did. Some were like, yeah, like rich, good-looking guys who are kind of badasses. But some of the others were like, no, that's not really me. And she asked him the question, then, why are you only attracted to those kind of women who only want that? And he had never really taken responsibility for his choices, and it was really, really interesting to see him suddenly realize that he was the one causing that. So can you take me just into how you kind of discovered that for yourself, and maybe how somebody else might do the same thing?
That's beautiful. I love that you brought that story up, because it links up to something very kind of like the backbone of a lot of the work that I do. Is a lot of people have stories about what is true, but it's really just what's true for them based on what they're believing. See, our beliefs, our thought patterns create our environment, create our reality. So, for example, if you're believing, men only want like a certain type, or women only want a certain type of guy or whatever, you're going to keep manifesting that person, because that's your belief. That's your subconscious, and your energy is sending that out into the universe, and that's exactly what you're bringing in. So once you change that story, truthfully, honestly, authentically change that story, you change the environment immediately. And so that, brings it into something that I love to speak into, which is really energy or relationships. Any type of relationship is all about energy. And so it really depends on what you are believing, what kind of energy, what kind of thoughts you're sending into the universe. Thoughts are not just like this thing that it's not just something that stays in your mind. They go everywhere. You're constantly sending them out whether you realize it or not. And so as a result of that, you're creating these environments around you based on what's going on in yourself, in your thoughts, in your mind. And so if you are like, okay, and you could choose to be a victim to that as well, right? A lot of people say, oh, well, I can't change my thoughts. Yes, you totally freaking can. You can change your thoughts. And but it's a practice of choosing to get real with yourself and to be disciplined enough to say, okay, I'm going to catch that thought and change it every time I have it, because I know once I change it, I get to change the environment and actually manifest what I want.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's funny. I've heard a lot of people say the same thing about thoughts, and it's actually funny because I've had people tell me over the years, they're like, like, you're really confident. How do I learn how to do that? And I'm the kind of guy who like writes out his goals a million times a day and repetition and repetitions. It's like, no, really not the secret. And I'm sure you practice some of the same. Now, I want to kind of ask you, a lot of people have what you probably see as the same kind of limiting beliefs about getting the kind of relationships they really deserve. And ultimately those beliefs putting them into something lesser. So what are some of the really common things that you see from people again and again and again that cause them to kind of come up short?
Yeah. So they're a little different between men and women, but there's overarching themes. And if you boil it down to one theme, it really is people are thinking that they're not good enough on some level. For women, actually for women, it's this not good enough and too much thing, because women are often labeled too emotional or too much. So women have a story sometimes about their age, their looks, their appearance, even sometimes with their money, but that's less of a thing. That's more of a thing for men, actually. And so there's all these external things that they think they need to have, but you could literally meet the most gorgeous woman with all the money and all the success and all the social life, et cetera, and she still doesn't have the relationship. So it really isn't about those external things. And then for guys, I see a lot of, not making enough money. That's a really, really big thing for guys. Or yes, the handsome thing that you just mentioned. But yeah, similar themes. People either think that they just don't think they have enough. But the thing is, even the people who most people think have it all still oftentimes don't have the relationship. So then what do you do there? They have some sort of belief that maybe isn't coming across, like they have everything else. And maybe their belief is, well, I can have everything but the relationship because there's something wrong with me. And that's their story. So it really varies person to person, but there's a lot of overarching themes, and it really boils down to, I'm not good enough.
So we see a whole lot of people in this world who are walking around playing that kind of story out of I'm not good enough. In fact, just recently in the news, obviously, Anthony Bourdain killed himself, and he's one of those people that everybody would look at and say he has everything anybody would want, but obviously that's not how he felt about it. So when people are kind of walking around with this limiting belief that says I'm not good enough and it's holding them back, but at the same time, what they really want is not just somebody to have, but usually somebody amazing and interesting that kind of vibes with them and they get along and they have fun together. I mean, how does one even start that process besides hiring you, which obviously is part of it?
Yeah, sure. That'd be great. Yeah. So I can speak directly into this because this was me before I got into personal development.
Right.
And what happened was, and I didn't actually know I was going to tell this story today. Holy shit. I'm going to go here.
No, she's getting real, guys.
I'm getting real, guys. When I was in my mid to late 20s, and now I'm 33, I fell in love with this guy who kept like kind of jerking me around And he had everything that I thought I wanted back then in a guy. And I, for some reason, even though I quote unquote had it all, didn't think I did. And there was this game playing that kind of went on in my mind of, you know, how I thought I would hook him. And it completely fucking failed. And, you know, the reason being that, you know, we had fun and we liked each other a lot and everything else. But at the end of the day, my energy was fucked. It was just off.
Mhm.
And, you know, if I could go back to that girl, I would coach the hell out of her. But, you know, he ended up not being my guy anymore. Like, everything works out for a reason. Everything is really meant to show you what you get to heal. And for me, I really got to heal my feelings of unworthiness with men. And, you know, he was kind of the turning point where I realized, wow, I really get to get support with this. I think I dated a few other guys before I finally had it. And I said, okay, like, I'm going to get coached because this is me. This is me.
Yeah.
Like, I cannot deny it anymore. This is me. I keep bringing in this bullshit. How do I change? Just tell me what to do. Just tell me what to do. And so that's when I started working with my first coach, and, you know, the rest is history. I mean, talk about night and day. Even just within the first few months of doing that, I mean, talk about everything that I've done since then. Huge difference. And it was because I chose to change my thoughts and belief patterns around myself. So that is hugely powerful. You have to decide you're worthy enough to get the support and then follow through. And that made a huge difference for me. And you know what? I actually ran into him several months later. He was with his new girlfriend, who I think he's now married to. And normally that would have sent me into like just take the rest of the week off. Like, I need a Xanax and like, but I was actually totally fine. It's totally fine. And I was totally fine because I'd done the work to get over my feelings of unworthiness that made me feel bad about dating him. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that was huge. That was really huge.
You know, it's funny you mention that, because the way I've experienced what you just described is, I at least see from the men's point of view, where there's all these relationship tips, and they're usually about kind of manipulating somebody else. So it's like, wait a certain amount of time before you text them back. And what usually happens is when you meet somebody that you just really kind of connect with on that deep level, you don't have to do any of that shit. Like my current girlfriend, amazing it could be, we, you know, text each other 5 minutes after we just spent a week together, right? You can do stuff like that when you're really connected with somebody. So one of the things that I've heard you say before is what's really important is just being vulnerable and being real. So how does that kind of like show up for you now, and compared to how you used to kind of show up when you were probably trying to manipulate guys into?
Yeah. So I would say, you know, energy is everything, and I will say that like a zillion times. But actually, can you repeat the question, because I had a thought and I lost it?
Well, it's kind of just that authenticity and vulnerability versus coming from a place of trying to manipulate somebody into doing what you want them to do, so they'll end up liking you.
Yes. So, I mean, really, vulnerability, and I'm going to actually be really specific about this, because there's two ways you can go with vulnerability. Some people share from a really victim-y place, and that's not the best way to connect with people. That's the best way to make people feel bad for you. So don't do that. But empowered vulnerability, sharing from a place of, wow, I'm going through XYZ and I feel totally empowered, but I'm feeling really challenged right now. That can create huge connection with someone else. So you're talking about a huge difference between playing games with someone that no one's going to win there. No one is going to win, because everyone always picks up on the inauthenticity at some point in the relationship, and then it's done, or it starts to falter, right?
Yeah.
But when you come from a space of, I really want to connect with you, make a deep connection, whether it's in your business, in your relationship, in your social life, that is going to get you so deeply connected to the people around you that that's just a night and day difference. It's completely different. I mean, for example, you know, just to share an example of how this leaks over to every aspect of your life, the types of friends that I had before I got into personal development work, some of them were cool and some of them were not supportive at all. I mean, catty, just not nice. And since personal development work, I think what's happened with some of them is that they've either shed away, like I don't see or talk to them really anymore, or they've come along with me in this journey energetically in a way, in a sense. You know, they've decided to like rise with me. And then I've obviously since then manifested like the most amazing friends that I could have, honestly, 10 years ago, if you told me I'd have friends like this, I would have said, you're crazy. Girls can't be that nice. Or people aren't that nice.
Yeah.
You know, people want to tear you down. And so that's just a big thought pattern change. It's really loud motorcycle. Oh, shit. Woo! And so that is a really big night and day difference. And you talk about your romantic relationships for one thing, obviously super important. A lot of people want to have a really good romantic relationship, but social life, my God, I feel so supported. I feel so supported. I have several really good girlfriends that I know I could call anytime and they drop everything to support me. And that is just not something that I would have had 10 years ago. It's huge. Huge.
Hell fucking yeah to that, by the way. Sounds like in the middle of that, obviously a big part of your transformation, and I think it's pretty common, is usually when one person is finally decides they're worthy to upgrade one area of their life, is usually everything else comes with it. Suddenly their health gets better and their business gets better because, you know, I heard the great quarterback Joe Montana, we were speaking at a conference together one time and he was the headliner and he said, the way you do one thing is the way you do anything. And he said for him that he practiced the Super Bowl every day in practice so that when he finally got there, he'd done it a million times. So you having gone through this transformation have obviously upgraded your social circle. Can you just kind of talk about a little bit about how important it is to have like a support network of people who lift you up and build you up and inspire you on kind of every level, and meeting cool friends like this guy? You know?
Yeah. Ooh, I just got goosebumps. So what I want to share about that, and I think because it directly links to what we first talked about with regards to thoughts and beliefs. So our subconscious is constantly taking in information like a sponge. It's constantly taking stuff in. And so it's another quote that I don't remember who said this, but you're most like the 5 people you hang out with most. And so that's because your subconscious is constantly taking stuff in. So if you have a supportive group of people around you, your thoughts and feelings and beliefs are going to mirror that. And that's what you're going to create. But if you have people around you that are nitpicking or trying to make you feel bad or aren't very supportive or have a thought, or they just can't help themselves and they have a thought process, a belief process that doesn't support them in their lives, then you're going to manifest more of that because that's what you're hanging around with. So it is hugely supportive and important to have an amazing group of people around you supporting you, because that's going to lift you up. You're going to lift each other up versus, you know, a downward spiral situation. And it just feels good, you know. I mean, talk about, wanting to accomplish a goal is obviously, you know, my friends, my life, who I let in and what I let in is very purposeful. It's very intentional. And it also makes me feel good. So, and that's really important. It's really important for me to feel good. So that is, I mean, I think that's probably really the most important piece of having a good social life, a good social circle is really knowing that you can all take each other to new heights and also have a lot of fun while doing it.
Yeah, you know, it's one of those things, as you become more abundant in those kind of like high level relationships, it really just tends to fill you up. And I think most people don't realize that. I really personally believe that like meaningful relationships are the key to happiness. And I don't mean just romantic or business or friendships, really like the whole collective picture is that, you know, the deeper connections you have with people, the more you're just going to enjoy it day to day. So let me ask you some kind of strategic stuff. Like somebody out there is listening to this and they're now deciding they want these kind of relationships. How do they even get started? How do they start moving in the right direction?
So first of all, can I just say that I agree with you, and that's why I chose to become an entrepreneur, creating meaningful relationships. I mean, not just being a love coach, but as an entrepreneur, we really get to select who we want to connect with.
Yeah.
Whereas if you are at a job, you don't get to pick any of that.
Right. Right.
When you're not an entrepreneur, you get to pick your team constantly, whether you're hiring people or whether you're working with people, right? Colleagues, etc. So I just want to say I totally agree with you there 1,000%, like right on. And then strategically, I mean, it goes back to, I think what we were first talking about, which is really about deciding that you're worthy of it. Deciding, and that itself is probably one of the biggest leaps you could make in your personal development journey, is deciding that you are worthy of having the great relationships, the great social life, the support network, a great relationship with your family if that's something that you want, a great business if that's something that you want. You got to decide that you are ready to choose to be worthy and ready to get rid of the old stories about why it hasn't been working. Because what you focus on expands. So if you're focusing on what works, what's going to propel you in the next direction, et cetera, that's going to propel you. But if you're focusing on what isn't working, you're going to get more of that. So I would say choose to believe that you're worthy, and then choose to change the story about who you are.
That was deep. You look like you're doing some channeling there. Had your eyes closed and everything.
I'm totally, was I closing my eyes?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been told I have like weird facial expressions sometimes. Yeah, I do think that I was intuiting something. So
Totally.
I do some of that back here.
Yeah, actually, so you kind of hit on something else there that most people don't really talk about in this world, but I think it's really important, and I'd love to hear your take just on flow states and using intuition to both guide these relationships and your business, because clearly you're in one right now. So let's hear some more about it.
Yes. So awareness. I'm a very feely person. I'm emotional, and that can be, in the past, that was an issue. But now it's amazing because I manage it and I harness it and I channel it, right? So if I know I'm a feeling person and I know that I do my best when I'm feeling good, and people always, by the way, like say something about my energy, blah, 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 and I'm like, yeah, that's super, super important. And feelings can actually, if you can harness and manage if you are a feely person and you can harness and channel your energy around your feelings, you can become super powerful in that area of your life, in that energetic part of your life. I've always been kind of a channeler, intuitive, and there's different things about that I'm still exploring, because I have premonitions about things all the time. It's kind of, there's a point in my life where that actually used to scare me. But what I always do, because I'm a feely person, I check in with my feelings and then I check in with my higher self. And if my higher self is aligned with the feeling, I go in that direction. If my higher self is like, no, Katie, that's your ego, that's resistance, then I pay attention to that. But I think regardless of where you're kind of at with what your personality type is, if you're a feely person, if you're a more thinking person, the crux of that is really that it matters to be aware. It matters to be aware. And it's easier to be aware when we decide to get in touch with ourselves every day, via maybe meditation or something like that. And for me, sitting still isn't my strong suit, I'll put it this way. But there's different ways you can do that. I prefer to dance. I prefer like moving meditation, yoga, things like that. And those are really good ways to train yourself to be more aware. And if you are more aware, you can make better decisions because you can tap into that, higher power and do the channeling. So which I do often. So.
True that, girl. It's all about growth and consciousness. So I'm not going to keep you for too much longer because I know your time is super valuable. So I guess my next question is, if people want to hear more about your awesome work, they want to connect with you, they want to find love, or even just get some of that awesome energy and send some back your way, what's the best way for them to do that?
For sure. There's a couple different things. So, reach out to me directly, info@katietiti.com, and I'm happy to connect and answer any questions you have. So.
Yeah, and I would, anybody who's about doing the deep internal work and kind of facing your own demons and living intentionally is somebody you want to listen to. So I wholeheartedly endorse this woman and go check her out.
Thank you. Thank you so much.